So let's see. Should we test this out yet? We'll wait. Let's take a look at some other things here real quick. Next place we'll take a look at here is the init.jsp. The init.jsp does contain all of our different tag libraries that we'll be using throughout our JSPs. We also reference some of our Java classes as well to do things like provide MVC command names and to manipulate the assignment object or assignment entity. We also have these three guys down here, which is going to help us with using some specific objects along the way. Right, so if we want something like the render request object, we have the portlet define object. If we want the Liferay theme object, we have this tag that's going to be helping us out. Same with the front end as well. All right, so with all of that being said, let's continue further on and we'll take a peek at some other things that are going on with our application. Let's head back over to our instance of Liferay. I'm going to cross my fingers here. We're going to click on the blue plus button here on the right hand side. So before I do though, let's connect some of the dots. Right, so where's that blue plus button coming from? So we're here in the view.jsp, and let's see if we can find that blue plus button. Let's see here. Let's see, looking for that blue plus button. Right, it's not apparently obvious where that's coming from. It could be a styling aspect coming from one of our classes here. Let's poke around. And I am very curious about that right now, of that plus button. Let's see. I would be looking for, there's my first hint here, but not quite. Let's see. So we would be creating a plus button, and behind that plus button, it has to have a render URL behind it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Now, it could be this guy right here. So we're creating the drop-down item to create that add button. Again, right now, it's just kind of speculation, right? So let's try this out. Let's see if that plus button works. So over here on the right hand side, clicking on the plus button, it looks like it's trying to load something. So we'll give it the time it needs to load. So after some time, it does load up. I'm going to do a little bit of cheating here. I'm very curious where that plus button is coming from. So gradebook assignment edit. You can see, you can poke in here and see the parameters in the URL. All right. So it looks like the parameter we're looking for is gradebook assignment edit. So I'll head back over to Developer Studio real quick. All right, if I look for gradebook / assignment / edit, is it here? No, it's not. So it kind of further confirms that it should be over in our assignment manager. All right, and since we abstracted out all of the names here, I'm going to head over to my constants folder or constants file. So constants, MVC command. So gradebook assignment edit is edit assignment. All right. Back over here, Control F, edit assignment in all caps. So it looks like using Clay, we have the toolbar that we see back here. It did take a little while to load, so I might regret this. So this whole toolbar right here at the top is created using Clay. From there, with the help of Clay, we're going to be creating this add drop-down item, right? And it looks like when we click on that drop-down item, right, we're setting a specific, or we're creating a render URL here on line 84. Within that render URL, we're going to have a parameter called MVC command name, as we should, right? And then we're also going to be having the value of the parameter MVC command names edit assignment. All right, we saw the value of edit assignment, right, is in this constants. It's /gradebook/assignment/edit. So we know when we invoke a render URL, we need an MVC rendered command to help us out with that. So view, let's do edit assignment, should be edit assignment MVC render command. And yeah, it picks up from the gradebook the MVC command like so. From there, we do a check to see if the assignment is null. Assignment ID, we're going to grab it from our render request parameter with the help of the param utility class to get that assignment ID. If no assignment ID, default the value to 0. If the assignment ID is greater than 0, we're going to try to get the assignment ID or get the assignment based off of the ID. Otherwise, if something goes wrong along the way, throw an exception, right? Go on. From the theme display object, we're going to get some attributes from it. Using the portlet display object, we eventually set the show icon value, that little back button, right? We have a redirect, which will help us redirect back over to the original view.jsp, and then we can set that back button to the redirect parameter here. From here, within the render request, we set 2 attributes. One of them is assignment, which is going to be the actual assignment object, and then the assignment class, which is going to be the, assignment class. All of that is done. We then render the assignment, edit assignment.jsp, which is over here in the assignment folder, and then edit _assignment.jsp. All right, so the edit _assignment.jsp, we start off with the choose statement. So we're going to first do a check to see if the assignment is not empty. So if the assignment object coming through is not empty, we have an action URL here whose value is the constant in the MVC constants class, right? Otherwise, the assignment object is empty. We have our action URL, which has the same var name right here, right? But the value or the name here is different. So if the assignment is not empty, we're going to be calling one specific MVC action command. If the assignment is empty, we're going to be calling another one. And whenever I see this var, I always like to see where it's at. And so we see the var is down here on line 39 is where we have our AUI form. So with the help of Alloy UI, we're creating a form. We have a couple of fields within the form, and within here, there's also some validation that's occurring with the help of Alloy UI. So we have one validation here for the title, which is just making sure that there's something in there that's required. Next one, we have a custom Alloy UI validator, right, using some regular expressions to help us out. We have a description field with a validator here as well. Alloy UI is helping us a little bit with that, as well as this Liferay UI input editor. So we're going to be using what we call the Alloy editor as a means of providing a description, right? And then from here, you may have noticed at the submit, there is going to be some JavaScript going on here. And so that JavaScript is going to be handled down here towards the bottom, just to help us map what's going on between the Alloy editor and the description field. So some JavaScript connects the Alloy editor to the actual description field so that whatever we type within the description field, or the Alloy editor, I should say, will be populated into the description field. Due date field is here as well. We're making that required. And then here at the end, using Alloy UI, we're making our buttons look nice. Right, we have a submit button as well as a cancel button. right? So when we click on the submit button, it will trigger the submit for the form. It's going to be the action invoking the assignment URL. I know this is becoming kind of like a rabbit hole as we dive through this, but just kind of highlighting what's going on here. All because I clicked on that blue plus button. All right. So assignment action URL is invoked, right? It's going to be calling one of these two guys here, right? And so we have two action commands to handle each one. We have an edit assignment MVC action command, and then an add assignment MVC action command. Each one will be called for their respective ones. To expedite the conversation, long story short, services in here calling our assignment service to either add or edit the assignment, get it over to the database. Okay. And then if things go wrong along the way, let's say we circumvent the AUI validation and then we somehow get through, there's still back-end validation or server-side validation. And when that's triggered, there's going to be a class called session errors that's going to pass over a key and then a message. Those messages are defined over in language.properties. Whew. So yeah, a lot of things going on here, a lot of things to highlight. So I'll talk through it one more time, but really quick. All right, so over here on the right-hand side, right, this blue plus button is shown to us because of Clay. The blue plus button is going to invoke an MVC render command. So render URL behind the plus button invokes the MVC render command to render this JSP here. The JSP, as we saw, has a couple of fields provided by us, or provided thanks in part to Alloy UI. The Alloy UI is creating this form for us. So we can enter a title. So this could be something like assignment number 1. We need a description here. This is being done for us by the Alloy editor. So, assignment description here, right? And then due date is also required. When I click the save button, this is going to invoke my action URL while at the same time calling that JavaScript method towards the bottom of the edit assignment.jsp. Right? The JavaScript is going to take what's here in the Alloy editor, map it over to the actual description itself. We're going to call services behind the scenes to create the actual assignment itself, like what we see here. Right? What we need to do is we need to provide the logic to display a message back over to our end user, kind of a nice way. So we saw the placeholder to do that. So let's head over there. A lot of stuff going on. So we need that display, we need that success message back over in our view.jsp. So here in the view.jsp, all right. So we need to first connect the dots and talk about where that success message is going to come from first. Right, so the success message is first going to come over from the add assignment MVC action command. Right, to confirm that, let's head over to the add assignment MVC action command. And just to prove to you guys that this is what's being called, I'll be back here in the edit assignment.jsp. Right, we have our choose statement. So when our assignment is empty, this is the action URL that's going to be invoked. And it's going to be calling MVC command names.add assignment. So this is going to be a action URL coming from the gradebook portlet, passing the parameter add assignment. And so here in our MVC action command, we are extending base MVC action command to handle action requests or action URLs coming from the gradebook portlet. with the parameter add assignment, just confirming that this indeed is what's being called. Right, once it's called, from here we have the do process action using the theme display object to help us grab some Liferay specific parameters. As we go down, we have the title, which we're going to be grabbing from the action request object and specifically looking for the title attribute from the action request. Since we made the title a map, so we can localize it, right? We're using the localization util to get the localization map that is the title. Right? To get the description, we just need to use the param util, right, to get the string description from that description parameter. The due date, kind of the same thing, param util to get the date from the action request object, using our date format factory util to get the date and then to get the locale. Right? From there, basically grab all of the attributes from the action request. So whatever we typed within those fields are stored within the action request object, and then we're just retrieving them with the help of a couple of utility classes. Once we've retrieved all of our different parameters from the request, we're going to try to add the assignment to our database. So we're going to try to persist it. So we're going to be calling the remote service to do some permission checking behind the scenes, using the theme display object to get the site ID number or group ID number as it's called behind the scenes. We're also going to be getting the title, description, due date, and we're also going to pass this service context object. Right? Over in the service layer, we can use that service context object to help us get some Liferay platform specific attributes. Assuming all of that is good, this is what we were looking for here. So right here, we have the session messages class, which is going to add to the action request object the assignment added parameter. We're going to hide the default success message, and then finally we're going to be sent back over to the redirect parameter. All right, so the redirect parameter is generally going to take us back to the view.jsp. So back over at the view.jsp, right, is how we render this JSP here. So we have a placeholder for our success message. Let's go ahead and implement the success message here. So this is going to be coming from the Liferay UI, and we can just kind of copy what we have here on line 16. The Liferay UI success key equals assignment dash added. I'll double check that over in my add assignment. Yeah, assignment dash added. Right, the message here. In practice, we would have to think up the message that we want to have, right? But we have our language.properties to help us out with this. So I'm going to head back over to my language.properties and looking for a assignment added successfully. It's going to be this key right here on line 46. Assignment added successfully. I'll go ahead and copy that, head over to the view.jsp, and we can paste that here within the message. I'll save the file along the way, and we can test this out. While we're here, let's do the update as well. So Liferay, I always do that. I do typo that. So make sure you're not like me and we do not typo. So Liferay UI success. Right. The key is pretty consistent. I can assume that this is assignment updated. You know what happens when you assume, so if this backfires on me, then yeah, it's not going to be fun. All right. And then assignment updated successfully. Okay, I'll get rid of the comments here and get rid of this guy here. Right. I'll group these guys together like so, just to make it a little bit easier to read. And then letting Liferay update behind the scenes. Okay, so we can play with this a little bit later. I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Let's head back over to our instance of Liferay. And one of the things that we want to do here is for each assignment, we also want to be able to create a submission based off of it. And so what we may want to do is we want to take our mouse cursor. We want to be able to maybe click on the card here, or the title, to create a submission. When I click on the options button, it doesn't give me too much to work with. If I click view, maybe there might be something submission related there. Yeah, so we do have our submissions here. If I click on the plus button, and let's see if it takes us anywhere. Yeah, so I could create a submission here. I'm gonna hold off. Right, and let's head back over to Liferay Developer Studio to implement some logic. And so let's head down. We're gonna go down into our JSPs. And one of the JSPs that we're going to be opening up is under the assignment folder. And we're going to be heading down here to the entry search columns.jspf. You're going to see the placeholder for generating a submission view URL. Right. Once we're here, we're going to add the following. So we're going to be creating a portlet URL first and foremost. So portlet URL, and more specifically, it's going to be a render URL. Okay. So I'll close this here just so that I don't forget. I have a bad habit with that. All right. Here in the portlet render URL, we can reference this URL as a var, and then the var is going to be called view, it's lowercase, followed by submissions with an S URL. In here, we're going to be specifying a couple of different portlet parameters. So portlet param, the name of the first one is going to be for our MVC render command. So the name for the MVC render command is always going to be the same for the first part. MVC render command name is the first part, and then the value is always going to be up to us, right? But again, since we're using training snippets, we have to adhere to what the snippets are. So since we abstracted this out into a class, right, we need to reference the class MVC command names, and then the specific constant is going to be view underscore submission, submissions with an S. Okay, let me close this. So that's my first parameter. Second parameter that we're going to be specifying is going to be what we call the redirect parameter. The redirect parameter is retrieved from the view.jsp, and it's kind of passed around everywhere within the controller layer. When we want to head back over to the to a specific URL, we reference this redirect parameter. Okay, and so the redirect parameter here is going to be entry.assignment ID. Looks good. You can close that. And then one more parameter along the way is going to be our assignment ID. Assignment ID. Right, and then the value of this is going to be the assignment ID. Okay, so from here, then entry.assignment ID. Let me change this redirect here. This is going to be current URL. So that's my fault. Uppercase here. Okay. All right, and I need to close the quotes, otherwise it's not gonna let me through there. And then go ahead and save the page. Whew. All right, so what did we just do there? So what we want to do is for each assignment, we want to be able to see the submissions that correspond with it. And so we're going to be invoking an MVC render command to render a specific JSP. As that JSP is rendering, over in the MVC render command, we're going to pass off a couple of different parameters to help us out. All right, so this should be our view submissions MVC render command down here. All right, so once we're here, render phase is being kicked off, right? Render method is being called, grabbing a couple of parameters along the way. Theme display object helps us get some specific attributes. Assignment ID, so that we can render the submissions based off of a specific assignment ID. Right, so to do that, what we're going to do is try and start off within our try block. Right, we're going to call our assignment service to get our assignments based off of the assignment ID coming over from our render request. Using the date formatter, right, to format the dates, set a bunch of different attributes here, right? The assignment, the permission checker, due date, create date, and so on, just so that everything is formatted nicely and we do some permission checking. Right? Add those attributes along the way. Next up, using that portlet display object, right, to get our portlet icon up and running and to create that back button so it redirects us. All of that so that we can render this view submissions.jsp. All right, so just to do a check here, we do have view submission and view submissions. So be careful there. The one is singular, the other is plural. All right, so let's head back over to our instance of Liferay. We can go ahead and click on the title of the assignment now that it is clickable. When we click on the title of the assignment, it'll give us a little bit of info about it. And then as we scroll down, you'll see a section called submissions. From there, go ahead and click on the blue plus button here on the right. So the view submissions here showing us all of these submissions for the assignment. We're going to be creating an individual submission, right? You can do whatever you want here. Let's do something like I didn't do my homework. Shame on me. So I'll go ahead and click save. Maybe the professor will have mercy on me. So once this is all finished, we have our success message showing up. We have our specific submission here. And if I want to view it, right, we see it gives us a little bit of trouble here. All right, so in order to view our single submission, we're going to be implementing our view submission MVC render command. All right, so let's go ahead and implement that. Let's head back over to our Liferay Developer Studio. And now that we're here in Liferay Developer Studio, let's first go over to the view submission MVC render command. Right, implemented those things there. Right, there's a little bit more that we have to add along the way, since we need to get the assignment and call some services over in the submission side. We need a little bit more than just rendering the JSP. So to set the stage, we're going to be creating a couple of our OSGI services, or service objects. So at reference annotation. So we're going to start off by getting our permission checker object. So protected assignment, permission checker, right? Assignment, permission checker is the name. Right, I'll do a control shift though at the end. Right. Next object we're going to be bringing up is going to be our assignment service. So again, we're going to be using the remote service so that we do some permission checking along the way. And then underscore assignment service will be the name of the reference object. All right. You can do, we'll get the submission service. If you really wanted to, you can use the remote. I'm feeling a little lazy this time around, and I'll use the, we'll use the local one. Submission local service here. Submission local service like so. And then last one, we're going to have the user service as well. At reference, so protected permission user local service underscore user local service, and then Control-Shift-O. It brings in all of those imports. It'll take a little bit of time to finish typing that out. You can hit pause whenever you need to, and I'll always be here when you're ready to start back up. All right, so first thing we want to do here within the render method, I'm going to bump that down a little bit. All right, so first thing we want to do is we want to get the submission ID number. All right, so the submission ID is going to be a long. Right, submission ID is equal to, and we can grab the submission ID from the render request object. So we're going to be using our param util to get a long, not get along, but get the long from the portlet request object. So this will be from the render request, and then the parameter we're going to be grabbing is going to be that submission ID. And then last part is if there is no submission ID, just default it to 0. That's fine. All right, next up is we're going to get our submissions with that submission ID number. So we'll make our service call to the submission local service, right, to get submission by the submission ID number that we just retrieved. Right, next up, I'm going to get, I forgot here, getting the submission object, we're not setting it to anything. So submission object like this, and let's bump this down. And let's see, Control-Shift-O brings in my submission object. All right, do the same thing for the assignment object since we're getting a submission based off of an assignment. Right, so coming from the param util, gonna get the long, get a long. Okay, render request object, parameter is going to be the assignment ID. Again, if no assignment ID, just default it to 0. Right, same idea here. Assignment object, assignment is equal to, and then this is coming from our service, assignment service dot get assignment. Grab the ID, so we retrieve the ID number. Going to get the assignment by the ID number. Right, so again, I'll go ahead and group these together like so. Okay, I need that semicolon. Right, it looks good there. Saving and rebuilding. Sorry, before I forget, instead of using get, we can use fetch instead. Here with the submission. Let me do one more Control-Shift-O. All right, so I can take care of the assignment here and import the assignment. And then I'll save along the way. Let's see, it doesn't want to import. The Control-Shift-O. All right, let's see what's going on here. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So with all of that, we can surround that with a try catch. All right, so let's see, where should we begin? So we can keep the longs out there, right? We can retrieve those. Let's bring the assignment ID. We'll take the submission and the assignment, and then we'll place those inside of my try block here, and try catch block. Okay, there we go. Cool. So first part here. All right. So grabbing all of the attributes, or grabbing our assignment and fetching our submission. All right, so next up, what we need to do is we're going to be setting the various attributes of our assignment and submission objects, right? So over here, right, we're getting our assignment, getting our submission. From here within our render request object, we're going to be setting a number of parameters so that they can be fetched or retrieved over on our JSP side and then displayed accordingly. The first thing we're going to do, let's start with the hard part. Let's get our date formatter to format the date nicely. So date format equal to, we got that from the date format factory util. Right, get simple date format. Right, and we're going to be passing two parts here, the string pattern and then our locale. Okay, so the pattern is up to us to set. Let me bump this down here. Boom. Nope, that's not what I meant to do. Let's bump this down. All right. So the format is going to be year, month, day. Oh. And then year, lowercase. Right, so time, right, month, day, year, and then for the locale part, we can get the locale from the render request object. Get locale, I knew what we wanted to do. All right, so we have the date formatted nicely, or we're going to have our date formatter help us out, I should say. Now with our render request object, we're going to set a bunch of parameters within the request. So to stay consistent, technically these are attributes. So the first attribute we're going to be setting is called assignment, and then the value of that assignment attribute is going to be the assignment object that we're retrieving from our service. We can do the same thing with our submission as well. Set the attribute, this will be submission. Okay, and then this will be just the submission object itself. Okay, render request object one more time. I'm going to be doing this a lot. Okay, so next attribute we're going to be setting is submission class. And that's going to be, well, the submission class itself. Uppercase that. So submission.class, semicolon, render request one more time, set attribute. The next one is going to be the permission checker. So assignment permission checker. Right, and that's the permission checker object. Right, and so we need to get that. So we'll use the service here. Assignment permission checker. So let me bump this down here since it is running off the screen. All right. Oh, a lot of attributes. Let's keep on going. Okay. Next attribute is going to be the create date. So create date. I need to put that as a string. All right. And then for the argument, right, we're going to be using our date formatter. So gotta double check date format. Right, and we're going to be formatting the date that's coming from our submission object, and this is the create date. So let's bump this down a line as well since it's running off. All right, let's keep on going. Render request object, set another attribute. Here we go. It's going to be student. So from our user local service dot, and we're going to be getting the user, and in order to get the user, we're going to, from the submission object, get the student ID. Here we go. So student ID is retrieved from the submission object, passing it over to the user local service to get our user, who's going to be represented as a student here. We'll bump this down here as well. All right, almost there. Render request, set attribute. All right, last one here, going to be the due date. So due date, and we can get that due date from the submission object. Right, but before we do, right, we'll use our date formatter, right, to format the date. And let's get this actually from the assignment, since this is the due date for the assignment. So assignment dot get due date, like so. And then we can bump this down here, and we'll do a little bit more formatting. All right, I'll bump down the submission, like so. And then we'll save along the way. Okay, bump this down just to make it a little bit more clear. Whew. All right, so a lot of stuff going on. All right, last thing we're going to do here is we're going to be creating that back button. All right, so before we get that portlet display, I have to get it from the theme display object. All right, so theme display theme display is equal to I'm gonna typecast this theme display from the render request dot get attribute. The attribute is going to be web keys dot theme display. And let's format this. Okay, so we'll bump this down like so. Space here. And Eclipse does one too many tabs here. I need that semicolon. Now that I have the theme display object, right, I can create that portlet display object from it. So portlet display, right, from the theme display. And then I'm going to be getting the portlet display. Okay, now that we have our portlet display, right, we want that back button to redirect us. So we'll get that redirect parameter from the render request object. So render request dot get parameter, right, and then that parameter was redirect. And then let's make that back button. Portlet display dot show back icon. Yeah, we want that back icon. Okay, and then portlet display dot set URL back to redirect. And then let's save the file here. Whew. All right. See what's going on here. Right, is show back icon. Let's double check that. This is supposed to be set. Sorry about that. Set show back icon. Right, there we go. There's that error going away. Scared me there for a sec. All right, so next thing we're going to do here is we're going to move some stuff around, and we're also going to take care of that exception down here at the catch. So let's just progress through. Start at the catch, and this is going to be a portal exception. We'll still use the variable or the letter E, and we'll get rid of this part here. All right, so this is going to be a new portlet exception here. Let me give that a capital P, and then parameter E and semicolon here at the end. All right, next thing we need to do is we need to move the return statement. So I'm gonna take this guy right here. We're gonna cut, get rid of some of the white spaces, and we're gonna paste back in the try. We're gonna save the file, and let me do some quick reviews here just to be sure that everything is good. We're gonna scroll back up towards the top. I'm gonna make a couple of checks around here. Looks good, looks good. Let me head back towards the top. I'm listening for the, maybe you caught this a little bit earlier than I did. This is javax.portlet.name. All right. And then MVC command / gradebook submission view looks good here. I'll go ahead and save the file. Let's see, we were over here in the assignment entry search columns. Let me double check over here. This is going to be used to display our submissions. So that looks good. That looks good there. View submissions, plural with an S. All right, so now that we've confirmed everything looks good, let's head back over to our Liferay instance. I have my assignment that I created a little bit ago over here. You're able to click on the title now, clicking on assignment number 1, or whatever it is that you named your assignment. From here, we'll scroll down, and I did create a submission here, right? And that options button that lined up with the assignment, allowing for us to create the submission. And then you can click on the ID number of the submission. And as we do, it's going to bring up the info for the submission. So we're going to jump back over here to the code really quick, again, just to do a little bit of review of everything that's going on, since there is a lot. So we're going to start over here at the view.jsp, displaying our assignment here within the search container, right? And it's also going to provide for us the entry search columns. So if we take a peek over here at the entry search column, right, we're going to have this view submission URL, and that view submission URL is going to correspond with the submission ID of the submission itself. So this is why we're able to click that ID number and have our render URL invoked. So when we click on this submission URL, it's going to be passing the MVC command name for view submission. So this should be singular here, be careful. So this is going to invoke our view submission, singular, MVC render command. So the view submission MVC render command, right? We coded all of this here, but again, the important part is here within the component annotation. We saw how I was very close to messing this part up. If we did, we would have had a bad time. From here, as we scroll down, we're going to be setting a bunch of different attributes within the render request so that when the JSP renders, we're able to grab those attributes and display their values. Right, as we scroll down, right, the most important part here is this return statement saying which JSP we're rendering specifically. So in this example, we're rendering the view submission.jsp, and then from there, it's going to be showing all of the different attributes of our submission. Right, there's some additional logic here as well, allowing for us to be able to edit a submission as well as view our grade and so on. So feel free to take a little bit of time to play with the application a little bit more. And then once you're ready, we'll go ahead and move on to our next part where we implement validation and feedback.